Welcome to Flip Your Lid with Kim Honeycutt. Kim is a psychotherapist and executive director of ICU Talks, a mental health speaking ministry. This is a podcast about how to flip your lid and learning how to reconnect to who you really are.
We have a really special guest today. Thank you for coming back to Flip Your Lid. And I met Alex Reegan very recently, and I just feel like we were just meant to meet and have a lot in common. But there's also some differences that you're going to hear today. And it might be different from your life, but it might not be as different as you think. So, my friend Alex is here. We met in the Enneagram cohort with the wonderful, amazing, beautiful Suzanne Stabile, and pretty much kind of knew from across the room that there's a similar specialness, craziness, whatever you want to call it.
Totally.
So we've been hanging out since. And so, Alex, welcome to Flip Your Lid.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and chat and see what we get on about.
Yeah, we never know with us. We're going to let it go wherever our aggressive self lets this go.
That's right. There's a lot of 8 energy happening. Who knows what could happen?
We are both E8, and we're going to see what happens. Whatever it is, it's going to be good. So we're going to kick this off by just asking you our famous question. What flipped your lid, and what measures did you have to take to reconnect to who you really are?
Yeah, I was thinking about that a lot. I guess the thing I came to that made the most sense for me was thinking about when I got sober, because I think that like when that happened, when I got sober, it was like this sort of, come to Jesus moment of like, oh crap, like I have to do this in this life without being numbed.
Mm.
Shit. Like essentially. And so I think that was the moment when it was this. I mean, probably not in that moment that I see it as that, but looking back, I can kind of see now how that was really that turning point of like just kind of it just flipped everything on its head. And it was just like up was down and down was up and left was right. And yeah. And so that just really began this whole process of uh, you know, changing my whole life around and trying to figure out what it was that I needed, why I was numbing so much, what I was trying to get away from, all of that stuff.
Did you take the traditional, what's considered the traditional route for sobriety? Did you do 12-step program? Did you, or did you do other paths?
I didn't actually do that. I think partly at the time, now I know a lot more. I've been to some 12-step meetings and I know a lot more about it. But at the time, I was coming off of uh I had been a heavy, weed smoker. I wasn't really a big drinker at that time. I had been at other times. And so I kind of was in that space where I didn't understand that AA doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be that it's alcohol, that you
Mm-hmm.
they'll welcome you. You could come through the door and talk about any
Mm-hmm.
addiction. But I guess I didn't know, I guess, in a way where to go. And so part of it was I went into, I mean, ironically, that first week, by that Saturday, about like 6 days in, that Saturday night, I was literally like, I don't care if I have to go back to like a church, like I have to go somewhere. And like, I
Mm-hmm.
just need, and so that's actually how I found this small spiritual center near where I was living in Oakland. And, just walked in the door, found their head minister. We hit it off. And like within a week and a half or so, I was like in her office doing some spiritual counseling with her. So
Mm-hmm.
it actually ended up being a more, I guess both are spiritual because AA definitely has tremendous spiritual components, but it ended up being an alternative form of that. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it was more just by somehow not just sheer will, but also just like I knew I couldn't go back to how it was. So it just like it just pushed me forward. That was like the only
Mm-hmm.
option. It was like, this will kill me if I don't change. So yeah, it wasn't really a traditional, sobriety in that sense that I followed that path. I have since been to some meetings. I've gone with some other folks. I've gone on my own. When I hit 10 years last year, I went to a meeting here where I'm in New Jersey. And that was the first time I've been to like a meeting just by myself where I didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
And that was good too.
Well, that's part of why I wanted you. There's many reasons why I wanted you to be a part of the Flip Your Lid family, and this is part of it is because it's so important we get it out there that that people get to find their own path, and that you get to find your own level of treatment, and that when we are free, we aren't so concerned about what the path is. We just know there's a beauty in the path.
Yep.
I'm so glad that you found your own way, because so much in your story can, again, as I alluded to earlier, can appear to be different. And so tell us a little more about other parts of this that just don't fit this. Like, not that there's a normalcy, but it's just not part of the normal realm of people's understanding.
Yeah, totally. So, I guess just to drop it out there. So I'm trans. I'm a trans man. So that means I was born assigned female at birth, but I identify and knew from a very young age that I was a boy, and that sort of they were confused. Even though in the 80s and 90s, I certainly did not have any language to
Hmm.
express that information. Nor would it have been safe to do so. I grew up in a
Right.
pretty conservative, evangelical leaning family. They were part of a mainstream denomination, but my parents are very evangelical and actually were part of a movement that broke apart the church in our area. And they ended up leaving and going to a much more conservative evangelical church that they now attend.
Huh.
Um, so, that was kind of the basis of it. I mean, for certain, by 6, 7, 8, I was like, I think they're confused, every time. Like, I remember my mom telling me, like, you can't run around in the yard with your shirt off in the summer, like my brother and his friends were.
Hmm.
And I was just like, why? Like, we
Yeah.
look the same. Like,
Mm.
my brain just didn't compute what was happening. And it wasn't until I think they started maybe in fourth grade or so, 10, 11, they were teaching us like sex ed. And that's when I really got confused. And I was like, wait a minute, like what's
Yeah.
transpiring here? And so, I think that was a huge thing of just like a secret, or I don't even know if you could call it a secret, because it was just like, I didn't even know how to talk about it. I knew for sure I couldn't talk about it with the people that I lived with or was around
Hmm.
the majority of the time. And, by puberty time, it was like clear that when everybody else was talking about all the boys they were attracted to and all that kind of stuff, and as that started to happen, I was like, I think I'm attracted to the girls, so that
Yeah.
caused a whole nother level of, confusion. I've always felt like when I was in the locker room for sports or for summer camp or wherever, it's like I felt like it was like wrong, almost felt like I
Hmm.
was like sneaking in there or something. It felt like inherently like this is insensitive for me to be in here
Wow.
around these women. Like even as a
Yeah.
early teenager, like it didn't feel right. And I didn't also want anyone to see me. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was really like a weird, that I couldn't explain. And
Mm-hmm.
again, back then there weren't a lot of the resources that there are now. There weren't a lot of the organizations that there are now.
Hmm.
And I certainly didn't have any safe adults that I could have talked to about this. So, it was something I just carried.
Yeah, the most beautiful, courageous people I've met are people who are trans, and now we have the vocabulary of non-binary. And again, this whole idea that there's such dualistic thinking, particularly in religions, particularly Christianity, the idea that it's saved, unsaved, male, female. Like, there's so much that happens inside of that we don't even understand, that scientifically, genetically, there's 8 or 9 different mutations of gender, and people aren't even open or willing to learn that, and to see your willingness to do what you have to do to become yourself. I want everybody to know that your book is what needs to be said. Speak your truth, release shame, find oneness, and just the idea of talking about the book, but just the pieces of this, of you figuring out how to be yourself when
Mm.
people are coming against you.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I think that all started that started a long time ago. As we mentioned, being an 8 Enneagram, I got a lot of pushback most of my life. I mean, I thoroughly pissed off every authority figure I have ever been in engagement with in whatever
Absolutely.
form, whether
Right.
it was teachers,
Yeah.
people at church,
Coaches, anything.
coaches, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. There were very few that I didn't just push their buttons to, the ends
Mhm.
of the earth. Um, so that was already always going on, and similar in my family too. I pushed a lot of buttons. I always needed to do things the way I thought they should be done, and the way I was going to do them was going to be different. My mom notoriously said I marched to the beat of my own drum.
Right.
Um, and so that already was sort of the precursor for all of that. By the time I got to like late college, it just got to a point where I was like, I can't just keep living this. Like I knew it was going to kill me by my into my fall semester, my senior year. I was just like, if I don't tell my parents that I'm gay or whatever, like this is going to kill me. And so, I told them. It went exactly how I thought it would go. They were like, you ruined our lives and you ruined all the work we've ever done in the church. And because they were
Mm-hmm.
pretty well known in the church community, really well known in the whole state that we lived in. And so, that didn't go great. So I kind of had to like do this like backtracking, like I'll try again kind of thing. Cause I was literally coming up on my final semester of college and I was like, actually genuinely concerned they were just going to be like, we're not paying for the last semester, like the bill was due. And I was
Yeah.
like, shit.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'll try again. It's like, actually, my brother and I talked, and he was just like, I think you got to try something because I'm concerned with how upset they are. So, I did that, got through, graduated, like literally with the, one engine out, kind of thing. Like it was just like I came in for a hard ass landing for
Right.
sure. And
Right.
so then after that, like most of my 20s was, just a constant sort of battle with them back and forth of, you know, excluding me from, things like, well, my grandmother died and it was like, don't come home with your friend, kind of energy and
Yeah.
all of that kind of stuff. And they, it just was really hard over time. I'd say by a decade out, my parents started to soften in certain ways. They started to like come to visit where I lived and stay at hotels and things like that. They wouldn't stay with us or anything. And they started to get to know most of our friends who, most of our friends we introduced them to were just straight couples, not to
Yeah.
like do that intentionally, but just they were some of our friends as well. So I think maybe that softened some of it for them. And they gradually got better in their own ways. They eventually even stayed with us sometimes, my ex-wife and I, and it was fine, but it's always been a very surface level relationship. Even as things improved, it was never like, let's talk about what happened. Let's go to therapy to get, I mean, like, that was never happening.
Yeah.
I've spent since I was in college, I've spent the greater part of that last 25 years in some form of therapeutic,
Mm-hmm.
offices, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
just spiritual direction, shamanic work,
Yeah.
therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, EMDR, art therapy, you name it. Um, just because I was trying to heal myself and the wounds that all of that really
Mm-hmm.
left behind. And, then I came out as trans in my like mid 30s. And that, of course, that opened up a whole nother can of worms for them. I don't think they understand even what that means.
Mm.
We kind of all have a joke going now. Every time I talk to them, they probably just think I have a permanent cold because
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
won't make the leap or understand that I would
Mm-hmm.
be on testosterone, kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, and you can't talk to them about it. The
Right.
times we've tried talking to them about things, it mostly just everybody just shuts down or cries or
Mm-hmm.
is like backs away and leaves.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just you know, it's fine. It's a like, hey, we are like a family kind of thing,
Yeah.
energy. And yet it's also just like there's no depth or like knowing each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a weird, my family sort of has always been then my family of choice and the people who I've,
Yeah.
created over the years. Um, and yeah, they can't call me he, they don't call me Alex. They don't,
Mm-hmm.
it's just been a real struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been almost, I mean, we're coming up on almost a decade now of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I don't hold out to be like things will change
Yeah.
because it's not worth sort of setting yourself up for that. They may
Mm-hmm.
or may not, but
Mm-hmm.
that just sort of is what it is. And so I've just navigated that.
Yeah, because this is about your recovery, right? When we expect people to do what they've never done, then that is still a younger part of us seeking something. And like your story is so compelling to me, and it's also very striking, the similarities between your story, even though it's unique to you, and Alok. And Alok is probably one of the most famous non-binary trans people, and in that when they shared about telling their grandmother, the grandmother's first response is like, "Look what you've done to our family."
Mhm.
And like your
Yeah.
parents' response is about your parents, not necessarily about what you have been through, the courage it took for you to speak your truth or anything else coming in. And just how do
Yeah.
you, and I know you're not a feelings person, you and I are both like middle finger to emotions, but the idea of like, how does that affect your internal template? How does it affect your understanding of relationships, understanding of self, like any part of that you want to speak into?
I mean, I think I thought I was feeling a lot of the emotions, and I think what I've realized through the Enneagram work is I was just thinking a lot about what I was
Yes.
feeling and processing it by thinking about it and talking about it even
Mhm,
potentially, but not necessarily feeling it in the body and letting it sort of
mhm,
process through as it needs to do.
mhm,
Um, so, I mean, I guess I would say, there's a tremendous amount of grief. You
mhm,
know, there's a
mhm,
lot of grief that is
mhm.
stored in my physical body. Like I have all of these random, funny, weird, chronic aches and pains, chronic moving, physical, and they can never, the doctors, traditional medicine can never find anything wrong
Right,
with me.
right.
But every time I've ever gotten body work or, anything spiritual work, the conclusion kind of comes down to that whole, as you know, as a therapist, the body never forgets,
Right.
like the
That's
body
right.
is going to hold it all. And
Yeah.
so I think that's what I'm in the process of now is actually now finding ways to navigate kind of like flushing out my actual physical body from holding
Mhm,
on to all of this stuff because
mhm.
it's sort of like in the same way that like, coming out to my parents was like, it was going to kill me if I didn't do it. In
Right.
the same way that like getting sober is going to kill me if I didn't. I have that same feeling of like, this is going to kill me if I don't, like
Yeah.
half the days in our household, we have a running joke that is like, "Not today, Satan,"
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you haven't killed me today.
Right.
Um, and so I think that's part of it now is just that's sort of next level of work then
Mhm.
is finding out how to navigate that grief um and asking for help in places that I need help figuring out how to
Mm,
process that, in new ways. Like I think it
mhm.
can't be uh the tools that have worked thus far have gotten me here, but it has that feeling
Mm.
of like it's time for new tools. I've
Yeah.
been fooling around with a little IFS work stuff. I've
Mhm.
been looking at some somatic stuff that I've been
Mhm.
doing with my spiritual director. Just some stuff like that to just find some new means and ways to like tap
Mhm.
into that grief and that
Yeah.
tremendous loss.
Yeah.
Um, because it's like nothing and it's God too, right? I mean, I think that's
Mhm.
the thing that was hard for me is that I lost my relationship with God in a way too,
Mhm.
and like my faith I don't want to say it never recovered because it recovered in a different way. Like my faith transformed into
Mhm.
something else and into believing in something else entirely. But I think I still have a tremendous like that 8 energy of sort of, like uh, you know, you've harmed me, you've like whatever, you're dead to me, that energy. Um, like, I think I feel that towards God in a lot of ways
Mm. Yeah.
sometimes still.
Yeah.
There's this part of me, I think there's speaking of the IFS, there's some
Yeah.
part of me that kinda holds this grudge of just
Mhm.
like, "You left me here to do
Mhm.
this, on
Mhm.
my own," kinda
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, definitely very protective part. But
yeah,
the somatic work and knowing some people have autoimmune disorders and the chronic pain is living in numerous systems that tell us that we aren't allowed to actually be alive,
yeah,
right? That when this, like when we do the work and we have this personal experience with God, like this idea of understanding what it's like to be emotionally sober and to be spiritually mature, then there's no need to decide to tell someone else how to be on their journey.
yeah.
Right. And so I just have found people who very much live in sympathetic, very much live in fight, fight, fawn, really love to tell somebody else how to do the work, but they can't tell me that from a place of connection. You have to be disconnected from self in order to tell someone else how to do the work.
Yeah.
And like that so much of what you've done is living in that and trying to stay safe and stay connected to yourself. It cannot be an easy journey for you.
Yeah, no, it has not been, and it's been exhausting, you know? It's
Yeah.
been such an
Yeah.
exhausting. I've been tired since the day I got sober. I've been tired
Yeah.
for
Sure.
11 years and
Yeah.
almost 1 month. I've been
Yeah.
tired as hell.
Yeah, well, and just, knowing that it's part of us being Enneagram 8s that we're very doing led, and so the thought is, I don't know how to feel this grief, and I'm gonna go do a whole bunch of things to figure out how to feel this grief, right?
Yep.
That's what we do, and
Yep.
that you're finding your own way to just release all of this. Yeah, whatever we don't release gets recycled.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so is there something particular right now that you feel like is being recycled that you're really looking for your right path to release? Like, if you like, what could get you to the next level for you? What do you think has to be released first?
Hmm. I think it's, really a practice of letting myself off the hook completely now, you know? Like,
Mm,
I'm such an externalizer
mm,
person, you know, like, I
mhm,
definitely have externalized everything. I see the world as outside of myself,
mm,
um, and, like, because of that, then I spend a lot of time seeing, obviously, the things that I felt everyone did, you know, my parents, whoever, community, church, what they did, and then the process beyond that was learning to forgive them for their
mhm.
actions, learning to, like, let them off the hook.
Yeah.
And I think in a lot of ways I have done, I never wanna say I've done all that work because that's not how it works, but I've done, a sufficient, tremendous amount of that part of the work. And I
Mhm,
think that in some ways, then now is the time for that very, like, internalized work. Like, how can
mhm,
I offer myself, because I actually have a tremendous amount of compassion towards my parents, my family, my brother, people I've, had issues with. Now, there are certainly people that it's like I'll never speak to again,
yeah.
because it's like
It's not
that's not
safe.
it's not safe and that's not the
Yeah,
road I'm willing to go down.
right.
But that's not to say I am still like mad or holding them. It's just like, no, you know, even
Mm,
if they called me today, I'd be like, not taking that call, kind
right.
of thing.
Yeah.
So I think though the part that I'm finding in the Enneagram work deeper is
Mm,
that self-compassion,
mhm,
and really finding the way, what does that look like?
mhm,
What does that look like to free myself from this? That,
mhm.
like, I couldn't get it wrong, I didn't get it wrong. Um, like, I'm very protective of my energy even, in the choices I make. Like, sometimes I'll get very much out of the 8 and I'll get guys maybe into low 5 where I'm, like, really
Mhm,
assessing all the options, and I'll kinda, like, check around with other people and poll people, and I'll, like, look at all the reviews of some, like, I have a hard time, like, pulling the trigger, and I think that's in part because
mhm.
it just, like, uh, what I know and, like, what is familiar to me feels the safest to me. Like, I don't like
Right.
surprises.
All right, absolutely. Nobody has a lot of shame like surprises.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, I've told my wife before, I don't like you don't have to surprise me with
mm,
gifts even. Like, you don't
yeah,
I don't ever do, like, a surprise party.
right.
I do
Yes.
not want, and she loves a surprise, she's like, "Oh,
Mhm,
I love a gift that I wasn't expecting," all stuff like, Like,
right.
I just, like, wanna know what's coming down the
Mm,
hill towards me. Like,
mhm.
I got my head on a swivel, I'm
Yeah.
constantly,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so I think that's part of the work I've been doing is also taking risks in certain areas where I can,
Mm,
to, like, step back into that confidence of the 8, to step back into that knowing, and not in an egotistical way, I know, but just in a knowing of, like, trust your gut, kind of
mhm,
thing.
mhm.
So I think that's a lot of the work that I also do is
Yeah,
navigating that.
yeah. What have you noticed as you are journeying through understanding the Enneagram, and those of you who understand the Enneagram spiritual journey, like, will never know everything within it, like, it's impossible, but that and how well it is very adjacent to Internal Family Systems by Dr. Richard Schwartz. like learning about parts and what's real inside of those, and what have you seen in that with Enneagram and IFS about what you've disavowed that you're bringing back in, and just anything along those lines with the 8 energy of how you see
Yeah.
that?
Well, I actually was doing some, I mean, not with a therapist, but my wife and I were just fooling around with some IFS stuff and like, asking some of the questions. And, I kind of like was taken back to this. Uh, I don't even remember a lot of my childhood. I have a lot of disassociation from my
Mhm.
childhood and just like, I have some very distinct things that I remember very clearly. And then the rest
Uh-huh.
is just kind of this
Yep.
blur. And, but I remember my 3rd grade teacher because she and I used to have a go around. I mean, at one point, it was like winter. She wouldn't let me take off all my snow gear. And I kept telling her, like, I'm going to get sick. I do not feel good. I am
Yeah.
overheated. And finally, I puked on her shoes because she refused to let me go to the bathroom and take my
Yeah.
off.
Right.
So that was a thing that happened. I used to get
Mm.
busted every day practically for talking in class,
Mm.
and one day she moved my chair. The back row had it like 10 feet behind it was like all the little cubby things, in the room. And then
Mhm.
another little couple feet back was like a nook that was like the fire exit that went out into the like playground. She
Uh-huh.
made me put my desk like in that nook, which again is probably a fire regulation thing.
Right. For one.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
that the 8 in me is like, this isn't right. This isn't how you do it. Um, so she put me in that chair. I couldn't even barely see the chalkboard. I mean, that thing was like probably 40
Mm.
feet from where I was. The
Mhm.
irony was it was actually parent teacher conference day. And I think she left my desk there. And so when my mom came in and asked where was
Wow.
my desk, I think she thought that my mom was going to be on her side. And
Mm.
that lady heard something from my mom about
Yeah.
putting me at basically outside. You
Right.
know, that has always stuck with me, and
Mhm.
that actually came up when we were kind of just playing around with some of the parts that there
Yeah.
was, like, a part of me that was that teacher that
Yeah.
was still
Sure.
really, like, controlling me and monitoring everything and like, "Oh,
Mhm.
don't do that. You're too much.
Mhm.
You're too."
Yeah.
And, so we were like, "How old do you think that I am?" And she was like, "Well, 10, obviously," like, or whatever 3rd grade was,
8.
like
You'll be 8 in 3rd
8,
grade.
yeah,
Mhm.
8, and I was like, "I'm 46." And I could see
Mm.
in
Mhm.
my mind's eye, I could just see this
Yeah.
energy of like, "Oh, well,
Yeah.
I guess you don't need me," kind of. And so I
Yeah.
think some of that 8 energy, has played out too in me where I've thought it was negative, right? Because I got a
Mhm.
lot of negative reinforcement about
Mhm.
which I think
Mhm.
people signed female at birth often do as 8s,
Oh, very,
as
very
you
true.
know?
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll get in that too, but just the idea for those of you listening that, part of what we do with our parts is a reparenting, but the exile part from Alex at age 8 getting updated and seeing like, "Oh, I can bring choice back into this. I don't have to always be the child in the corner."
Yep.
You know what I find it fascinating, Alex, is that age 8 is usually when shame becomes very alive and prevalent for a child.
Interesting.
Age 8 is also when you start realizing your body's a sexual body, and it's when you lean into your dominant center,
Interesting.
isn't
So
it?
a lot was happening at
A
that time.
lot's happening of development of self, and again, that goes back to what we have learned to disown about who we actually are because somebody else has decided it doesn't fit their equation for who
Yeah,
we are, right?
totally.
Yeah, and just even with that, what you said a second ago, talk a little bit about what it's like to live this life as a woman, the level of discrimination or anything you experience of that, and then now to be walking and very much passing as the cisgender male, like just goodness, those two worlds. What's that been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it couldn't be more different, I suppose. I mean,
Mm,
I was a awkward giant girl, right?
yeah.
Because I mean, I'm like almost 6'2". I'm a
Mm,
big person, like I'm not a
mm,
little person. And so, I mean, in 8th grade, I was like practically this tall, and people called
mhm,
me like Yeti. And it was like I was
mm,
always kind of
mm,
like I'd grow so fast, so my clothes would be too short,
mm,
my pants would be too short. So it was always like a thing going on until I finally kind of stopped growing. So it was this sort of like awkwardness of like, because I just never fit the standards of what a girl looked like either, so that was like hard for me growing up because
mhm,
it was like, not only did I feel like, "Oh, I really don't think I'm what you say I am, but I also look at me. I do not belong here. Like
Wow.
I could make that connection.
Mhm.
And so that was hard. But then obviously, living through the whole, like I have a lot of eights, male eights in my family who are very much like, all the women for the most part of my family are teachers and things, not that there's anything wrong with being a teacher. I'm just saying it's like
Mhm.
that 1950 to 60, like here, you can go be a nurse or a teacher kind of
Right.
energy.
Right. So
Um,
occupation segregation.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So there was never like what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
I don't
Yes.
remember ever being asked that question.
Mm. Mm.
Um, and first of all, I also didn't think I'd even live that long, so I wasn't even worried about what I was gonna try to be when I grew up. Like I was
Yeah.
like, I'll be lucky if I, get to
Yeah.
18 at this
Yeah.
point. So part of that was that experience. Plus, I went through a lot of situations with men cis men being completely, inappropriate and not understanding what no
Mhm.
means, as
Yes.
many people
Yes.
assigned female and people who identify as female have gone through. Um, just a lot of like feeling like a second class,
Mm.
citizen,
Mhm.
like, and watching all of my friends go through that same experience.
Mhm.
Then coming out in my 20s and stuff as a very sort of like, I know they don't use butch anymore, but we did back then, like
Right.
butch mask lesbian, and so then there was a whole other version of like treatment that I received.
Mm.
I often got stopped from going in bathrooms
Yeah.
by other women
Yeah.
for almost a decade and a half. I would
Yeah.
get stopped by women when I was walking with very feminine, like I could be walking with a woman in like a ball gown and
Mhm.
they would stop us both thinking I was going in the wrong bathroom. So that was
Mm.
like constantly a battle. So then that became this point of irritating discrimination. And then when I began to transition, I mean, the interesting part of that is that I have only now been on testosterone for the last like 16 months, 14 months. Yeah,
Mhm.
16, I think. So I transitioned and I had top surgery within a year of transitioning. But I didn't pass necessarily.
Mm.
Now, I pass in some ways just because 'cause I'm almost 6'2" and, I'm a pretty
Mhm.
big looking guy. So, as long as I didn't open my mouth or people didn't look when COVID hit, it was great because my mask was covering 2/3 of my face, and
Yeah.
I got gendered correctly much more during that whole
Mm.
first year of COVID.
Mhm.
Um, so but the interesting change for me was, like, the restrooms stopped being a hassle because I just started using the men's restroom, and men don't even the men's restroom is a whole different ball game. Like,
Yeah.
I always joke that I wanna write like a graphic novel that's about restrooms because it's just like a whole different beast. The men's room, there's
Mm.
no eye contact, there is no talking, you do not
Mhm.
say anything to each other. It is
Mm.
the exact opposite of what the women's bathroom is.
Yeah.
There's no like, how does my hair look? What are we doing later?
Right.
Lipstick putting on at the is nothing. Don't even look up
Huh.
near each other.
Huh.
Um, and so that actually weirdly felt safe after a quick amount of time because there was no
Mhm.
guy gonna stop me and be like, "You're in the wrong bathroom." They aren't even looking at each other, you
Right.
know?
Right.
Um, so that was interesting. And then it's just now in recent, I say like the last 6 months that I more fully pass. The
Mm.
other day I was getting body work from a guy who had never gotten body work from, and we did an intake on Zoom. Then I went to him, and like when I was on my stomach, he was talking to me and he's like, "Okay, roll over." And he saw my incisions for my top surgery and he's like, "Oh,
Uh-huh.
did you have like breast cancer?" Like he thought
Uh,
I was just a dude that had breast cancer.
yeah.
And so I finally just outed myself. I was like, "I'm actually trans." He goes, "You left that off the intake." I was like, "Well, I don't often get to just see what happens, I don't
Yeah.
get to
Yeah.
just
It's
play
good.
that out." And, so that is now becoming more of that shift and change where I am just
Mhm.
passing and people are
Mhm.
just assuming that I'm just some straight cis white guy.
Yeah.
So it's like you go from the lower, by all means, white women are not at the bottom of the at the ladder, but you go from a lower level of the ladder
Mhm.
to like
Mhm.
the top of the food chain energy, and it
Right.
is definitely different. And I notice certain people in certain situations treat me differently
Mhm.
than they used to before. Like
Mhm.
now, like in the grocery store or weird stores like that, like older, cis straight men, or assuming straight. I mean, I'm guessing that they look
Mhm.
like acknowledge me in a
Huh.
way. They don't acknowledge my wife. They would never have acknowledged me in the past, but there's this weird like eye contact, kind of this head nod, like, hey.
Mhm.
And then you're like, hey, and I don't know why that is. I don't know what is like a
Yeah.
code or what's happening, but that
Mhm.
has begun to happen so much more where there's just this
Hmm.
acknowledgement
Mhm.
of like, hey, man, or whatever. And so that's
Yeah.
like some weird new. And so I just go with them like, hey, man, well, I don't know
Yeah.
what that means. But so interesting things like that, that are different for sure.
Well, I gotta ask this, right?
Do it.
Car buying experience.
Ooh, I have not bought a car yet as in this space as having the beard and the deeper
Yeah.
voice, so that'll be interesting. But when I go to like the dealership to get my oil change and stuff, they all just treat me like a guy, they're
Yeah.
just like, "Hey
Yeah.
man, good to see you. What's up? What do you
Right.
need today?" So there is some energy with that. I mean, I'm also am a pretty aggressive person, as we've
Uh-huh.
discussed about and like have pretty big energy. So I've never really
Mhm.
had trouble at a car dealership. I mean, I've like
Right. Yeah.
always walked out with the car I was gonna get at the price I
Right.
was gonna
Sure.
get.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, I do think that kind of stuff will be different.
Yeah. It is it is
Sorry.
fascinating in this sense of, as a female 8 and how I've been treated, things that have happened, how the aggression is seen. And so and me watching male eights in like different meetings I've been in and how they get received and still
Yep.
my responsibility is to take up my space and not take up too much space, but take up what is mine. But it is an interesting, fascinating perspective and a different
Yep.
experience that you've had.
Totally.
Right. And I
Yeah,
would
it's so true. I'm interested to be in some different spaces when people don't know because, obviously sometimes I'm in workspaces or things where people have known me before and after, and
mm,
so I don't
mm,
necessarily always get treated differently.
yeah.
So it is interesting when I'm in a unique space where someone doesn't know, I do think the energy is sometimes different and I might
Mhm,
be more likely to get away with something that I wouldn't have
right.
necessarily gotten away with
Yeah, it's
in
gonna
the
be
past.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really relate to the bathroom stuff. I mean, as a little girl and even into early sobriety in my, probably 25, 26, 27, and I had to do a lot of therapeutic work for my gender to not be what made my life dangerous.
Mm.
So to be seen as a boy when I was a kid and early adulthood and very similar experiences going to bathrooms. And the whole thing is, and I'm not trans, but I do think that there's an understanding of there's more than male, female, but to have male, female energy, like that is part of being whole. But to be
Yeah.
a kid and to be told you're in the wrong bathroom, it's
Yeah.
incredibly traumatic when you're in the right bathroom.
Totally.
It's a
And
whole
so
different
ridiculous that we
yeah.
feel the need to police anybody that just
Mm,
is trying to go pee.
yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
understand that to save my life. I don't understand. I've never in my life been concerned with who was in the bathroom.
Right, right, right. Well,
And I just don't
and
get it.
just to go further with, like, who we're policing, the whole now, fabrication that's being taught about that, that it's as if it's drag people or trans people who are going in the bathrooms and hurting when really, if
Yep.
there's statistically something happening, it's men posing as females to go harm somebody. It's never been the drag queen. It's never been the trans person, right? That's not it. And yet that's somehow been prescribed
Yep.
to an entire community.
And the irony of that is that no laws in place. Look, there are laws on the books to not rape people, not sexually assault people, not
Mhm,
beat people, not murder people. That's
mhm.
always been laws.
Right.
Why would a trans law stop someone who had that
Mm.
in mind to hurt someone from going into a bathroom and hurting someone? It's like
Yeah,
it doesn't make it make sense. It doesn't
right.
it's not logical because
Mhm.
there is a rule against people murdering people.
Yeah.
And yet,
Yeah.
sadly to say, people murder
Mhm.
people every single day all
Yeah.
across the globe.
Right.
That
That's right.
doesn't stop it from happening just because there's a
Mhm.
rule against it, but you're
Mhm.
actually putting a target on the back of people.
Mm.
I know people who are cisgendered women, who identified women, born assigned female birth, who are butch lesbians who have
Yeah.
been bullied out of bathrooms
Yeah.
by a group of women now because they
Mhm.
think it's their job to police,
Mm.
kicking quote men
Mhm.
out of the bathroom. And it's
Mhm.
just like it's a dangerous precedent.
It
And,
is.
someone's gonna get killed. And people
Mhm.
have already, but more
Yes.
people are gonna get killed or injured because
Mhm.
of this misinformation. I mean, if I
Mhm.
hear one more time somebody say, "Well, I don't want my daughter in a bathroom with men," like, dear God, please make it stop.
Yes, please. Please, like, we're missing and I get people's maybe possibly people's biggest fear, like, I always feel like our biggest fear is abandonment, but inside of that is our people don't have the capacity for change. People fear change.
Oh, yeah.
And so when you have people who are walking around who obviously are not buying into this false agenda and false narrative that you can't express yourself and be creative as self, like that's a threat to people who are boxed in.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
and that's what I think it's really about, is
yeah,
that I think that so many people, uh like, I have a joke too in my family where we're like, "I didn't even know that was an option." Like,
yeah.
that's like a and I think that's actually what comes into people's minds when they
Mhm.
see someone who's, like, bending gender or, like, living in a different sexual orientation than they understand. They
Right.
hear someone be like, "Well, I'm pansexual," and they're like, "I don't know what that means. I have to look that up."
Yeah.
When that energy happens, I think what does ultimately happen in people's minds is this fear of, like, it's like the biggest thing of FOMO. It's like
Mhm.
they have this
Mhm.
huge fear of what have I missed out
Mhm.
on in my life
Yeah,
because I've been too afraid to be my unique,
that's
authentic
right.
self.
Bottom line is what you just said. That's the absolute bottom line. I do not need to try to change you or harm you or be toxic or come against you or predatory listening, all the things people do on social media, if I am living authentically.
Exactly.
I might speak into what you're saying. I might see if you want to have a conversation, but the toxicity, when people come at you, there's no, they're not seeking conversation. They're not
Agreed.
seeking anything. They simply are just in fear that you're doing something that they haven't been able to do.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's part of my
they're
love.
exactly. They're triggered by something that has nothing to do with you, like
Right.
whatever is in them. But unfortunately, not enough people are doing therapy or are doing
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
deeper spiritual work, doing things like IFS, doing things like, whatever to help
Yeah.
you learn about yourself and get deeper. Instead,
Mhm.
it's just much easier for most people to just point their finger at someone else and say,
Yeah.
"Hey, you're the problem." You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
that
it's really true. Yeah,
yeah.
and I was thinking about this morning, and I was thinking about you and talking to you today, and when I was on my run this morning about how so many mega churches, large churches believe we know we're right because we have the numbers.
Hmm.
Whereas, like, my church is considered small, and we're all together because we're not interested in being right.
Hmm.
Like, there's not a need to be right, right? It's
Yep.
more of seeking the emptiness that allows people to show up authentically, safely, and in a sacred space. And just the idea of the people that I know who are trans, non-binary, who are neurodivergent, whatever it is, the idea of walking around in this world authentically, creatively, I don't think it gets more beautiful than that.
Hmm.
And you're doing that and teaching other people if they're willing to step into your world through whether it's through following you on social media or your book or anything like it's just like you're a walking vessel of what it means to just seek true self.
Hmm. Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'd say to that too. I mean, I appreciate that. I appreciate you saying that. And I want to point out the thing about the church. They think they got the number, so that
Right.
makes them right. One of the my favorite things that I wrote about in my book was this thing that I felt like I just downloaded from the divine.
Mhm. Yeah.
And the thing is that I don't know is where God exists.
Mm. That's good.
And, like, what I mean by that is that I think every time we're going here, I know for sure, and I know for certain, this is what God is, this is what God wants us to do, this is
Mm,
what God believes, this is the church God would be a part of, all that stuff, then that is, like, the biggest red flag to me, because
that's
I
right.
don't think God has a space to enter into in
Mm,
all of that
mm.
surety,
Right. Sure. That's
because
good.
you're so sure
Yeah.
it's like a big bubble of,
Yeah.
"Look at all this. Let's
Yeah.
all huddle together in this surety."
Mhm.
Where can God enter into that
Yeah. That's
space?
good. That's good.
But that space when you can surrender and say, "Man, I don't know."
Yeah. 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 It's so true. And it even goes back to starting sobriety, like the whole idea of like, I don't know anymore. Like I knew when I got sober, all I knew was I don't know how to drink. I don't know how to not drink.
Hmm,
And that gets to be a starting place. And to now step into, for me as a teaching pastor, as a Christian, of still knowing like every day, I just want to learn, but I really want to unlearn.
hmm. Yeah,
Yeah, like I don't think I have to have certainty anymore.
yeah.
But I sure as hell was overly attached and addicted to it before.
Hell yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. There's something beautiful inside of that. What's the one thing in your book? Like if people only got one message or one chapter they read or kind of thing, what would that be?
I mean, I think ironically, it would be sort of the end of it, which is, sure, there are all of these aspects of ourselves and ways that we identify, whether it's, you know, your gender, your sexual orientation, the color of your skin,
Mhm.
your religion, whatever the things are that we all use as these labels.
Mhm.
Those things are all fine, and they're all very important aspects of us, sort of like making our way in this experience and in this
Mhm.
world. And I would say to that is, and we don't have to stop there. It's not a, like, complete sentence to just say, like, "I'm a white trans guy who
Yeah.
believes in spiritual stuff," instead of, like,
Mhm.
saying I'm a Christian or whatever.
Mhm.
Like, it's not enough to just stop there. The thing is to go on to the, "And
Mm.
I'm more than that."
That's right.
And
That's right.
that's just a small little caveat. It's
Mm.
almost the IFS thing,
Mhm.
sort of extrapolated out into our
Mm.
everyday life. Those are just parts of us.
Right. That's right.
That's just a little tiny speck of who I am and what
Mhm.
makes up me.
Mhm.
And if we don't realize and reconnect to, I'm a strong believer that I think everyone we encounter and meet is just some aspect of us. I think
Right.
there's some reflection back to us of something
Mhm.
we either haven't healed, because if we're pissed
Right.
off and we don't like the person, it's because
Right.
it's something we haven't healed. Or if we're
Mhm.
like, I love you and all stuff, it's like some aspect of us that we have healed. And so we're like
Mhm.
reconnecting with that.
Right.
And if we don't ever see ourselves as oneness, as just we are just drops of water, and yet we make up the whole ocean. Are we
Mm.
water by ourselves? Yes.
Mhm.
And yet we make up the whole ocean together. Or
Yeah.
if it's a speck of sand, we make up the whole desert together.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
doesn't make us less than by just saying, I'm this speck of sand, but
Yeah.
how much more powerful, magnificent,
Mm.
beautiful, extraordinary are we as a whole body?
Mhm.
And that's like the truth of the, capital T truth is like, that's
Yeah.
who we all are.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think it's just we're afraid of that. We're afraid
Mhm.
of our greatness. We're afraid
Mhm.
of the love,
Yeah.
because we're so accustomed to hating ourselves and hating everyone else and all of
Mm.
that stuff, that the love is a scary, scary thing.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I think that even goes into 2 things. One, it reminds me of Richard Rohr's quote about his statement about, like, our soul has no gender, has no sexual orientation, has no like, that what goes to heaven and all that, like, we're so focused on things that it's not even what is about the next life. So why do we make it about this life, so much? It reminds me of that. But even thinking of the contemplative prayer and the things that I'm sure you're already on that path before we started the cohort with Suzanne Stabile, but just the things that we're doing about learning, like life is about love and self-donation love. Like all this idea of really figuring out what causes me to push love away, not receive it, or the other extreme of like, I'm just going to keep taking from you, and it's insatiable. And so anything you want to say about that, the journey you've been on, about the contemplative prayer and the meditation and stuff that we've all been working on since
Yeah.
we started the cohort?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I've done a lot of different types of that work over the years. I think some of the most
Mhm.
powerful stuff I've done with that was a lot of the shamanic work that I did, that I started doing right when I got in the couple weeks after getting sober.
Yeah.
That sort of became my AA in a way, so I was like just doing this intense transformative,
Mm.
spiritual, therapeutic shamanic work.
Mhm.
And so I think, yeah, anytime you can get back in, and it's easy to get off of it, it's easy to forget, oh, I got too busy today, or this
Sure.
happened, or, like I'll get back to it tomorrow. It's easy to sometimes do that and not realize how, we're only doing a disservice to ourselves,
Right.
like God is not like, you missed a day of meditation.
Right.
Like
Right.
I don't believe that's like the God that we
Yeah,
are part of.
that's right.
I'm sure there might be people who would say otherwise, but I don't
Yeah,
believe that. And
I
I
agree.
think, God would probably be kind of chuckling even if we're like, well, we'll get to it tomorrow, not thinking that actually every breath and
Mm.
every time we take a step, every time we put food in our mouth, that could all
Mhm.
be a walking and living
Mhm.
meditation
That's
and
right.
like gratitude and all that stuff towards, oneness.
Mm.
So, um, I think, stepping back into that in a way that's, um, some of us from the cohort have tried to keep each other accountable to, and, like keep track. And we even made a little spreadsheet. And that's funny to me because, like, it's kind of like the sobriety. Like, there was part of me that was like, oh, I will not break this. Like, there is
Yeah,
part of me that was
sure.
like, I'm not going to lose this streak, like,
You're right.
and so I
Performative.
can, exactly, I can
Yeah,
get into that kind of three energy of like, I'm going to achieve this,
right.
um, with it. And so I have to be careful of that, to not be like, make it a game that it's just like, when you like log into Candy Crush and it's like, you've logged in every day this week, and you get like a prize. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
not what you're going for.
right.
And yet that can sometimes help me stay on track.
Mhm.
Like I'll even be like, I don't care, I'm doing 2 minutes, and I'll put that
Mhm.
on the list, kind of thing. But, getting back to the spaces and the days, like yesterday I had acupuncture, and it's like, that's a great time to just close your
Mm.
eyes and just be,
Mm.
you're just there. You're in it. You're feeling what you're feeling in your body. You're like,
Right.
very present, and to just use that space to see what, you might hear, or what messages you receive, etc. And I mean, that's always been, the quiet, ironically, and I think maybe that's just
Mm.
hard for the eights,
Mhm.
sevens, and threes,
Mhm.
that aggressive type.
Right.
The quiet is has been a scary place for me,
Yep.
you know? Like, my brain has not always known, obviously, by my 3rd grade teacher being like, "Quit talking so much so that I'm gonna put you, like, in the
Right, exactly.
yard,"
Yeah.
you know? Um, like, it's almost like I felt afraid of what would happen in the silence. And
Mm.
interestingly, when I got sober, meditation, because I'd been doing some sweet meditating when I was smoking weed. I was having some transcendent experiences. Like,
Sure.
I re-met up with like my grandmother and her twin sister, and they were in heaven. And I had this whole like, I was having some extraordinary meditations.
Right.
And then when I got sober, I got so terrified of meditating, because right before I got sober, I had had a really bad teeth infection, and I was on, pain meds, antibiotics, smoked weed, took like weed gel capsule. I was like, and
Mhm.
nothing was touching the pain. And I fainted one night.
Mm.
And I don't ever know if it was the pain, all those drugs, or a combination of both, or what,
Yeah.
but it freaked me out.
Yeah.
And so after my teeth surgeries and everything, I had to wait 2 weeks before I could have weed. You can't smoke.
Mm.
So at the end of the 2 weeks, it was like my time was up and I went and I took the tiniest little hit and I, within a half hour, was so paranoid and freaked out
Huh.
that I was like, I knew intuitively, I was like, I can't ever do this again. Like I have to
Wow.
be done.
Mm.
But what happened in that was I noticed when I was meditating, the way my body felt right before I fainted, where I kind of was like, I didn't feel my body anymore because I was just like out. Meditation has that feeling where you don't feel your
Mm.
body anymore because you all of a
Yeah.
sudden get to that deep place. And it felt like the trauma from the fainting. And for a long time, I would not meditate unless I was with someone.
Oh, that's makes sense. Yeah.
So I had a lot of undoing of that kind of fear around it
Yeah.
and work in that's taken me years and years to undo.
Mhm.
And the shamanic work helped me in that as well, for sure. But the coming back to that always, whenever I've had time away, it's always where I get, the
Mm.
deeper answers. You can tell in
Mhm.
your nervous system after you do it
Yeah.
for a couple of weeks that things start to calm down and you start to find a
Mm.
different balance. And it is like, I think it is such a crucial practice, and
Yeah.
it's under like it's like people know that because we talk about it now in society, and yet I still think people really underestimate
Mm.
what it can actually do for you and what even meditation means. Because I think, we got all these apps now where it's like some guy's talking to you in this quiet,
Uh-huh.
calm and it's like, what also happened to just what if you just sit there? Like, no
Yeah.
music, no
Sure.
anything, and that's
Sure.
hard. It's hard.
Yeah. 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 No, it's so true. And it goes so into just so much of our lives is not about knowing self, being myself, and then just being.
Yeah,
And these become beautiful practices to try to get there.
yeah,
Right.
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. What a great example you are of that. All right, Alex, I'm gonna put you in the hot seat. Just give you a few simple questions, and then we're gonna
Bring
make
it.
sure people know how to get in touch with you.
All
See that
right.
here? See that's how you and I talk. I might bring it, the
Bring
aggressive
it.
stance. Right, bring what you got. All right.
Can I tell you one funny bring it story? I
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Of course.
taught when my nieces were very little, like, I mean, they were 5, 6, 7, I once taught them bring it. And when I took them once, they wanted lunch. They wanted like a burrito or something, and their mom was like, "Oh, can you take them to Taco Bell? They liked it." I was like, "Sure." So like we're in the drive-through at Taco Bell, and my little tiny niece, who I think was like 4, she like yells out the window. The guy goes, "Do you want mild or hot sauce like with it?" And I was like, "I don't know." And the little one yells out, "Bing it, blueberry girlfriend." I don't know who taught her the blueberry girlfriend part,
Right.
but the Bing it was definitely mine. And
Yeah.
for years we always said, "Bing it, blueberry girlfriend."
That is
And
perfect.
the guy gave her some hot sauce and
Oh,
she
I
ate it.
bet.
So,
I bet. Yeah, I
yeah,
love that. Yeah, and, just I've learned even since the cohort more of, like, my vocabulary is aggressive, and if without the reflection and someone speaking that into me gently, ironically, I wouldn't even realize how that's just how I talk every day.
totally. Yeah,
Yeah,
her
yeah,
mom was like, "Did you teach her to say bring it?" I was
yeah.
like, "Yeah,
I guess I did.
I did. It was an
Yeah,
accident, but I
but it
did." Yeah,
still happened. Yeah,
totally
yeah.
me. Yep.
Alright, good deal. Alright,
Anyway,
hot
all
seat.
right.
Alright, tell me your favorite binge-worthy TV show.
Oh god, right now I'm rewatching The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
And I'm, like, trying to decide what number everyone was, and that's just, like, a fun
Oh,
thing to try
yeah,
to figure out. It's like
everybody
the end
has
of the
a
world, and you're like,
yeah.
"What is that guy's number? What is
Yeah,
that
what's
lady's
their
number?"
Enneagram number? Yeah,
Yeah,
perfect, perfect.
exactly.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. Tell me what surprises you the most about people.
Whew. Um, I think how desperately just self-centered we are.
Mhm,
Like, we're
mhm.
actually just thinking about ourselves.
Yeah,
And, like, we all are. That's the
yeah,
funny part is my wife and I just said the other day, whenever you think someone's like, "Oh, they must be ignoring me because they, like, didn't get back to me quickly or
uh-huh,
whatever," it's like, you know what it actually probably is? They're just so in their own world. They are
yeah,
not even thinking about you, and it's not
right,
anything personal. It's that they're just focused on themselves.
right.
And the truth is we're really thinking about our selfishness when we
Uh-huh.
are upset about someone else's. And
Right.
yeah, but it
Yeah.
surprises me sometimes how like kind of oblivious we can really sometimes be
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
what's going on with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your favorite song?
Oh gosh. I think my favorite song is it's called This Is Me. It's by my wife's band, Girly Man. They're
Oh,
they're retired, but it's just always been one of my absolute faves for almost 20 years now.
I would
And
love to hear that.
yeah, yeah, check them
Yeah.
out. They're retired, but the music's still out there everywhere. It's called Girly Man. They're like a folk pop like trio
So let me get this right. So
harmony.
your current wife's band was called Girly Man way
Yeah.
before she met you.
Yeah, oh yeah, and it's 2 girls and a guy in their
Yeah.
band, and they're all queer and yeah. Yep,
That's fantastic.
yep.
That's
It's a good
fantastic. I love
good
that.
band name. They peaked early, I joke. Nowadays, they'd be like, "Girly Man, that's an awesome name," but people
Yeah.
back then are like in the early 2000s, people are like, "Girly Man? What do you mean?" You know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I love
yeah.
that. I love that. All right, Alex, tell people how to get in touch with you. How do they grab your book, whether it's your social media, Instagram handle, whatever it is.
You got it. So you can find my book anywhere books are sold. I think right now Hay House is actually having a sale, like 40% off. So you can grab it on there. It is called What Needs to Be Said. You can
Mhm.
find me at alexregan.com. You can find me on Instagram. I don't do much on TikTok. I feel way too old for that app. I like to watch like cats and
Agreed.
rhinoceroses and stuff on there, but I'm
Agreed.
on there at both is Rev Reegs, REVREEGS, and on Facebook, which is basically whatever has been on Instagram. So,
Yeah.
but you can find me in all those spaces. And yeah, I hope if you grab my book, you can always shoot me a message. I can try to send you a signed placard thing. And
Cool.
I always appreciate the reviews, trying to get that
Mhm.
up a little higher on the
Mhm.
Amazon so they start pushing it out into things when people search. So
Yeah. Yeah, if y'all read his book, leave him a review. It helps us to get to about 50 reviews. It does something, and so just know, like I've read your reviews. You have really, really good reviews because it really is an excellent book. Everything that you're doing is just authentic and it's real. And so y'all grab his book, follow him on social media. And Alex, thank you for spending time with me today.
thank you. I'm glad we got to chat and see where it goes. It was a great conversation, and
Yeah,
I'm going to get see you next week in person.
we get to hang out in Texas next week
That's
together.
right.
So
Of all
excited!
places,
I know, gotta love that. All right, y'all. I don't know exactly what you heard today, but I do know that you heard something that will help you reconnect to who you really are. We'll see y'all next time.
Thank you for listening to Flip Your Lid with Kim Honeycutt. Please subscribe, rate, and share. You can find Kim on Facebook or Instagram at KB Honeycutt. To get an autographed copy of Kim's book, visit butyourmotherlovesyou.com. Remember, no matter what, treat yourself well today.